Final Fantasy IV was released back in 1991 for the Super Nintendo. In my opinion, it was one of the greatest Super Nintendo RPGs ever. It's been ported and reimagined on several consoles, with the PSP version being its latest iteration. It's bundled together with its sequel, Final Fantasy The After Years, and a 3-hour interlude in between. All three of these together create Final Fantasy IV, the complete collection. Since they are separate games with different stories released in different decades, I'll be splitting the review into two parts. Let's begin with Final Fantasy IV. You start out as Cecil, a dark knight tasked to do horrendous deeds by his king. After questioning the morality of his task, the king banishes him and his best friend Kain to deliver a package in a neighboring town. Unbeknown to Cecil, the item murders the entire town of summoners with the exception of the little girl. His guilt leads him to protect the girl and band together a group of individuals to oppose the kingdom. But is it really the kingdom that's evil? Or is there a greater force pulling the strings? You'll have to play the game to find out. You get a wide cast of characters, all memorable in their own way. Some leave, some die, some turn to stone, some betray you, some sacrifice their lives for you, and one turns into a paladin. The story has so many complex elements, it can hold its own to many of today's RPGs. Every developer should really take cues from this game and ask themselves, does this story in my game match the quality of Final Fantasy IV? Due to the limitation of its time, plus the linear translation, the story isn't as fully realized as it should be. One minute you'll be saying farewell to your lover Rosa, and 15 to 20 minutes later you'll be in a city on the other side of the mountains where she's sick in bed. Had this been a PlayStation 3 game, there'd be enough cinematic beauty to not make the pacing feel so uneven. And with each release, the game tends to get a new translation of dialogue. In the PSP version, they've simplified and shortened everything, so it's just a straight narration of a story, and there's no attempt to add extra characterization. The older Super Nintendo translation was very cryptic, and maybe I'm naive, but cryptic sometimes comes across poetic. In this version, they've redefined the dialogue with absolutely no flavor. Most of the beauty in the game comes from what the story is attempting, and not necessarily how it's executed. Because of this, I'd love for this game to be reimagined on a newer generation console, a novel, or even a movie to give the story the justice it deserves. The battles are turn-based. Each character has their own special skill and their own array of spells and abilities. Rosa the White Mage casts support and healing spells, Edge the Ninja can throw weapons, and Kain the Dragoon can defy gravity. The skills are acquired by leveling up your characters in battle. If you've played most JRPGs, you understand this leveling concept. In the complete collection, they've added an automated feature to the battle system, which can be convenient and detrimental at the same time. It feels like Square Enix understood that the battles are repetitive and slightly uninteresting, so they added the feature to automate the battles. When you automate the battles, it also accelerates the attack animations and wait times, putting the speed of battles into overdrive. Battles are randomly encountered, and you'll run into a lot of them, which is where the automated feature becomes convenient. Where it becomes detrimental is that when you use it so often, the game is pretty much put on cruise control, and you're not retaining any value from the battles. Another addition to what I've deemed the cruise control system is your characters can walk at a pretty fast pace. Between zooming around on the map, finishing battles in less than 20 seconds, it's pretty easy to get wrapped up in the structure of the game and not the game itself. Now, I've never been someone who puts it on the hardest possible difficulty, and I'm not somebody who's going to play the game at a normal pace just so I can congratulate myself in the mirror. I literally have no integrity when I play games, and if I'm having a hard time in the game, I won't challenge myself if there's a way out of it. I need the game to keep me disciplined, and making games easy is too convenient to fall into. One of the few things I liked about the 3D remake on the DS was that they made you play tactically in the boss fights. You had to use several spells at your disposal to be effective. In this game, there are simply too many spells you won't use. I stuck to the basic heals and elemental spells the entire game, and never strayed into useless spells like Sleep, Poison, Pig, Toad, Drain, etc. Maybe if you pride yourself into being a pro gamer and it makes you feel better to use all of these spells, good for you. Unfortunately, it's pretty much a waste of time. Bosses are often immune to everything, and regular battles are just too quick. Once I had the selection of spells I wanted, I'd just automate my entire party to use them every battle. They did do a complete graphical update to this game from the Super Nintendo days, and as you can see, it's gorgeous. If you play through the original, the graphics are enough to play it again. I've almost become so desensitized to these larger cinematic games like Final Fantasy XIII that this beautiful 2D game sent me to memory lane and reminded me why I have such a large appreciation for these games. Final Fantasy IV does have subpar dialogue, uneven pacing, unnecessary spells, and an all-too-convenient cruise control system. It does, however, have unique characters, a riveting story so full of potential it's almost too good for the platform, and wonderful graphics. Final Fantasy IV was the game that changed my life as a kid. If it didn't exist, I may have never gotten to RPGs in the first place. Final Fantasy IV, of the complete collection, is just a shadow of its former self, but it's a shadow of a beast. I give this game an 8.7 out of 10. This is a part 1 of a part 2 review. The second part will include the sequel to the game, Final Fantasy The After Years, and how it compares to Final Fantasy IV. Thanks for watching. For more reviews, like, subscribe, or go to www.wootstick.com. Every Sunday, I release the top 3 gaming news stories for the week that matter to me.